Time for the final entry in the Werewolf-athon, Wolfman edition. So everything's colored again except me, huh? Hope this doesn't lead to anything bad happening, but anyway, we're finally taking a look at the 2010 remake of The Wolfman. This film, first announced in 2006, originally had Mark Romanek as director, but when he left due to creative differences, the job passed on to Joe Johnston, who's best known for Captain America: The First Avenger and Jumanji. Joe thought he could complete filming in 80 days, which was what Universal expected, but due to a limited budget and many reshoots, the film release had to be delayed. This process even included a last-minute redo on the film's musical score because Paul Haslinger composed an electronic beat that supposedly felt out of place. Then again, this is Universal, the same studio that ran its Jaws franchise into the ground, so how bad can they botch this up? Do I even need to ask? Oh, that's real cute. They play the old Universal logo, but in color. I wish I could experience that sensation. The movie opens with that old poem from the first movie. Then we see a man running through the woods, who is being stalked by some unknown entity. I guess whichever Wolfman we have likes toying with its food first, but at least there are brief glimpses of the monster before the title card. Anyway, we're now introduced to Lawrence/Larry Talbot, played by Benicio del Toro. He's a Shakespearean actor in the year 1891, and he's approached by a young lady named Gwen Conleth, played by Emily Blunt. She was engaged to Larry's brother Ben. Why does this matter?
Benjamin is missing. From Blackmore, he's gone.
Did my father send you?
No, I'm here on my own. It's been nearly a month since anyone has seen Ben.
She also brings up the murders of 2 people at around the time of his disappearance. Now, we're not entirely sure if Ben was the guy we just saw getting killed, but she does want Larry to help her look for him.
I am under contract for the next 30 performances.
If this is about your father, I know how you feel.
Do you?
At least there's actual conflict between Larry and his family in the reboot, but he also comes off as a bit of a douche. I suppose there's time to build on him as a character, just as long as he at least shows a noble side to him that evens out with his wolf half later on. Sure enough, we see Larry holding onto a photo of his mother and brother, so he does care for them at least. Back to the plot, an old man tries to give his silver wolf-headed cane to Larry. It's a cool item that doubles as a blade, but Larry refuses. He only takes it when it's left behind on the train. He soon arrives home at his family's countryside manor. He's been gone so long that the dog doesn't recognize him, but his father is not as forgetful. This version of John Talbot is played by Anthony Hopkins, aka Odin from the Thor movies, and Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
Thought I offered my help in any which way I can.
Yes, a splendid idea. Lawrence, a splendid idea. Too late, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, your brother's body was found in a ditch by the Priory Road yesterday morning.
Oh, so there's no chance that Ben could return as a werewolf. That would have been a neat twist to have, instead of letting him die right away. The only other resident in the manor is Singh, played by Art Malik. He's John's servant, and I'm sure he'll be important later, but for now, Larry goes to see Ben's body. They've been apart for so long that our hero never saw what Ben became. I mean, when he was alive, of course. At the pub, Larry overhears some assholes pinning the murders on a traveling group of Romani, but one guy compares this attack to another from 25 years ago.
Brains and guts and God knows what, lying all over the moor for a quarter mile. And Quinn, the look on his face, like he'd been eaten alive. Whatever did it was big, had claws, and didn't mind a load of buckshot.
You sound like you know your stuff. This conversation gets personal for our hero when it turns to a woman who married into the Talbots. It's clear that the woman in question is Larry's mother, and he doesn't want to hear that she committed suicide. He tries picking a fight with these guys, but nothing comes of it due to dinner time at the manor. Gwen's here too!
I recommend the baked eel.
John and Larry have a bit of a tiff with each other regarding the treatment they get from the civilians of this town. But they also fight over Larry's choice to become an actor. We also learn that Ben was some negotiator with the Romani group, which will matter in a bit, but why is he wearing shades at night?
She exerts enormous power, doesn't she? Never look back, Lawrence. Never look back. The past is a wilderness of horrors.
It's going to turn out that John was the werewolf who killed Ben, isn't it? Though I suppose the story could still work if that's true. There can be build-up or dramatic tension as Larry fumbles around while the audience knows all along. But anyway, after giving Ben's his things to Gwen, Larry begins having a flashback of his childhood, when sailor outfits were in fashion for young children. But things get creepy as young Larry looks around for the source of these strange sounds. There's blood appearing out of the ground, and we see John holding his deceased wife, who seems to have committed suicide if the razor is any indication. The next day, as Larry talks to Gwen, we further learn that his father put him into a mental asylum for a year. Now it's really apparent that John's an unpleasant guy. At any rate, Larry visits the Romani camp to ask about Ben's medallion that he had. He's told to see this movie's version of Maliva, played by Geraldine Chaplin. But before we can learn anything from this conversation, those same jerks from the pub show up. What now? Wow. I think that's the fastest werewolf tackle I've ever seen. So, they're convinced that the Romanis' pet bear was responsible for the murders. But really, they're just racist assholes. The werewolf shows up to cause a panic, and a lot of people get mangled and maimed. There aren't many on screen, but the ones we do have look cool. Larry tries rescuing this one woman before she gets bolt-tackled by the creature. Then he helps out this small boy, who runs into the foggy rock area nearby. While there is some good tension with the werewolf's unpredictability, I'm not sure how Larry could survive against such a monster. It's a little too overpowered compared to the original, is what I'm saying. Sure enough, the creature strikes and bites his neck. Luckily, the townsfolk show up and shoot it away from him. Maliva stitches Larry up, despite the other Romani telling her not to.
Mulți vor suferi din cauza asta.
Sometimes the way of fate is a cruel one. He can only be released by someone who loves him.
And what about the other people who got attacked and were left alive? Did you let them die even though they're closer to you? Larry is taken home for bed rest and he begins to see things, including... Seriously, was that a half-turned werewolf? Or is this like cursed? Does turning into a werewolf make you see unrelated things? I mean, the original movie kinda did this, but at least it was with things we knew about. Also... Why do I feel like this is gonna be like every other horror movie that overuses jump scares? So time passes, Larry is still in bed despite his new powers, and John is still acting suspiciously. What felt like months was more like a week apparently, as the doctor tells Larry that his broken arm is healed. And even though there were people who saw the strange creature and lived to tell about it, the doctor doesn't believe that the devil did this. Doesn't stop Singh from preparing, since he has a set of silver bullets. He definitely believes something is up. Meanwhile, we see the arrival of Inspector Francis, played by Hugo Weaving. He's here to talk to Larry about the recent attacks, and despite the presence of many witnesses from the event, he's not buying their accounts. Are you seriously going to ignore the Romani's testimony just because of who they are?
A great mystery it is, given that there are no natural predators left in England capable of inflicting such horrific injury.
But clearly there are, considering the injuries Larry took. You think our hero did this to himself because of his mental history? Sounds like the inspector was around for Larry's admission into the asylum, so he's pinning his mother's death on him too? Well, that can't be, because this all looks like a setup. Whatever. Larry has more hallucinations before being approached by Gwen, who regrets bringing him back home. But he says he doesn't mind. If anything, he's slowly starting to appreciate her, so it kinda makes up for Larry's earlier behavior, for understandable reasons. He's just not good at opening up to people. At least he's not some possible creeper like in the original. More of Larry's werewolf powers start kicking in. His hearing has increased, and he detects a lot of people coming for him. Why is that?
Nearly the full moon. You were bitten by the beast. You bear his mark now.
Oh, now you believe what happened? You sure as hell weren't convinced before. John intervenes before they can do any harm to his son, and threatens to kill them for trespassing. Later that night, Gwen tries to comfort Larry again, but he starts to feel the temptation that comes from being a ravenous wolfman. Knowing that something bad will be happening soon, he tells her to leave as soon as possible.
If anything ever happened to you, I'd never forgive myself.
Not like you can end your own life if that happened. But she leaves, and we pass the time with this clergyman talking about God and all that. Inspector Francis expresses his skepticism towards superstition, which is preventing him from arresting Larry. And speaking of, our hero tails his father down to his mother's tomb. Look how divine this looks. Larry then finds some kind of restraining chair in front of his mother's shrine, and John comes in to be cryptic about his love for his wife and his decision to lock up Larry oh so long ago. He admits to knowing of his son's curse, but also...
I don't think they'll kill you, Lawrence, but they will blame you. The beast will out.
As I thought, John was the werewolf from earlier, so now it's Larry's turn to take the plunge into darkness. It's not too bad. At least it's not an American Werewolf in Paris level of bad. Larry runs towards the hunters, but falls into a trap. But some of the hunters do something stupid and fall down the hole. So this happens. Now, the makeup artist for this movie was the legendary Rick Baker, and he wanted to replicate the original Jack Pierce design. Reportedly, it wasn't that difficult to do, since Benicio was already really hairy. So I guess he really was like a Wolfman already. Anyway, while I can't say the writing has been stellar, the kills are pretty good at least. And I just remembered, didn't they all have silver bullets? We literally saw them making the stuff earlier, and that's supposed to be the one thing that kills a werewolf. Hell, with how Larry's been shot, he should have taken a lot of damage. Did the writers forget about them? Either way, Francis heads out to where the hunters got killed. I think he'll have to believe now, given all the howling in the night. Next morning, John tells Larry that you've done terrible things, like he's proud of it. Then the posse show up to arrest Larry, leading to this.
It is as you said, Inspector. It is as you said.
I'm sorry, Sir John.
Bastard. Larry is taken to the asylum, and this one doctor guy looks so happy to see him.
You disappoint me. But we have made enormous strides in the treatment of delusions such as yours.
Really? We just had more people die in brutal ways, and you still think that this is caused by delusion? And of course, this place utilizes torture as treatment. It does lead to some freaky hallucinations involving the people Larry knew and loved, but his being here feels more like stupidity on the part of Francis and company. John then shows up in Larry's cell, At this point, I'm either thinking this is a vision or he's really here, and he goes over how he got cursed. More or less, he was bitten by a feral child that looks nothing like a werewolf, so he turns every full moon. He tried restraining himself with Sings' help, even contemplating suicide at some point, but he eventually chose to embrace his wolf side so he could satisfy his urge to kill people.
Quite resolute in his decision to leave Talbot Hall for good and to take Gwen away from me, I became drunk and violent, and extremely violent, and I struck out at Sing, who was trying to restrain me, and I knocked him out cold. Oh.
Yeah, you can tell Anthony Hopkins is really chewing the scenery with his portrayal of John, who doesn't show remorse for all the killings he's done lately, which included his other son. This is also a major break from the original, since it was a story about a man who's tormented with guilt due to his wolf side killing people. Here there's less emphasis on the duality of man, and it's just a matter of good wolf versus bad wolf. It might have been a good twist, but only if the movie kept John's identity as a Wolfman a little less obvious, or at least make him as morally ambiguous as his son, to make his possible death more heartbreaking. But what's done is done. Larry wants to kill John, who leaves behind a razor to gold his son into suicide. But unless that blade is made of silver, it's probably not going to help. Next, Larry's taken to a demonstration in front of witnesses, plus Francis, to prove that the full moon has no effect on him. Larry warns everyone not to do this, but no one listens. So when the moon shines on him... Some of the CGI works, but not when it lingers for too long. At least the practical gore looks great. Like when Larry rips out this guy's stomach. Of course, because Larry might still be resisting his wolf side after his transformation, he just throws the bad doctor out a window, where he's impaled on a fence. Our hero probably just needed a way out, so now he can be an American werewolf in London. It's time for bloody rampage and chaos, and it's glorious as heck. So, Francis, still think this is all his delusions? Larry escapes and demorphs the following morning. He reaches Gwen at an antique store and gets her up to speed with the plot, including the wolf transformation that he and his father could do. She offers to help him, saying a cure has to exist if this is possible. They eventually kiss, as all lovers do. Before Francis and crew show up, they search the place but can't find the Wolfman, who's long gone. But to avoid suspicion, Larry dresses up and blends in with the crowd. Never mind, I'm sure you got suspicious eyes on you again. Gwen does some research into the werewolf legends and eventually decides to seek help from Maleva. She learns that there isn't really a cure and that to really put down a Wolfman, the killing blow has to be made by a loved one. So as Francis assembles a hunting party, Larry tries sneaking back to the manor to grab some silver bullets. He finds the remains of Sing during this search, making it clear that his father is truly becoming a monster. John is seen playing the piano and acting smug as usual. They have the typical evil father and good son talk.
And I have my own robe brought to be placed upon your shoulders, rings for your fingers, shoes for your feet.
What you should do is pray, but we both know it wouldn't do any good.
Finita la commedia.
Well, you won't be acting like that once Larry shoots you. Oh.
I removed the powder from those shells many, many years ago.
And Sing never bothered to check them all this time? I thought he was gonna be more competent than that. Oh, and John has Larry's cane, and I guess touching silver is fine as long as you don't get beaten or shot with it. They fight for a bit, unmorphed, and John gets the upper hand, but the combat really starts once they transform. And just to make sure we don't get them confused, given how similar they look, John rips off his clothes. This looks cool. even if some of the CGI isn't that good in spots. But just as it looks like Larry is doomed, he kicks John into the fireplace. This gives our hero a chance to get a few good slashes in, and...
Decapitation!
Gwen shows up, as does Francis, and the latter is bitten by Larry when Gwen interferes. She then makes a break for it in the woods as the Wolfman chases after her, and when all seems lost with the hunting party closing in, Gwen tries pleading with Larry not to succumb to his Wolfman instincts. It seems to work, thus giving her the time to get out her gun and shoot him, and while he dies, he grabs her one last time as he turns back to normal. Truly a tragic end. However, it seems like Francis survived, which means... So I guess he can just die off right now, right? Right? Well, anyway, that's the movie, and I'm very mixed on it. Even if The Wolfman resembles a bit too much like other modern-day horror films, it still had its moments of satisfactory transformations, action, and gore befitting the monster. The writing is where a lot of this movie stumbles, though. I will give the movie a bit of credit for playing around with the original story, but there's no ambiguity or mystery here. Despite focusing on the psychological feel and making it seem like Larry is behind the murders, it's kinda obvious that John was responsible for all this. And when he's found out, he starts acting like a mix between Odin and Loki Odin, where he tries to chew the scene while remaining as calm as possible. Besides that, the other characters are either okay or forgettable. Even in the case of Larry, whose character is a little more refined compared to the original, it still felt too much of a slog to sit through and watch him mature. So while it's not anger-inducing like certain bad movies, this attempt to modernize the Wolfman was kinda bland. Finally! I guess this means the grayscale curse, or whatever, has been lifted without anything bad happening. Meaning I can end this Werewolf-athon on a bit of a sweet note. So, until next time, I'm the Media Hunter. Media's my... The hell is this?